Welcome to Headphone News, International Edition for Friday, November 22, 2024.
Sri Lanka seeks IMF support for economic recovery. Sri Lanka is anticipating an announcement from the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, about a staff-level agreement for a bailout. President Dissanayake mentioned this during the first session of the new parliament. The country hopes to secure around $337 million in funds following IMF approval. Dissanayake's coalition achieved a significant victory in the recent elections, winning 159 out of 225 seats. An IMF team is currently in Colombo, the capital, to review the $2.9 billion bailout program. Sri Lanka is facing economic challenges after a crisis in 2022 that led to a major contraction in the economy. The country is aiming for growth in 2024, with plans for debt restructuring and adjustments to the budget.
Mexico votes to abolish regulatory bodies. On November 20th, 2024, Mexico's Chamber of Deputies voted to eliminate most regulatory bodies that oversee economic sectors and ensure government transparency. The vote resulted in 347 lawmakers supporting the measure and 128 opposing it. This reform seeks to centralize government functions and cut public spending, with supporters claiming it could save around $5 billion annually. Critics worry that this change may diminish transparency and increase government control. A final vote on the reform's details is anticipated soon before it proceeds to the Senate.
Royal Mail reports profit amid challenges. International Distribution Services, the parent company of Royal Mail, reported an adjusted operating profit of £61 million for the first half of the year. This marks a significant turnaround from a loss of £169 million during the same period last year. The profit is attributed to strong demand for parcel services, despite challenges in the market. However, Royal Mail expects rising costs, including a projected increase of £120 million in national insurance starting in 2025. The company is also facing a takeover bid of £3.57 billion from Czech billionaire Kretinsky, which is currently under review for national security concerns. The outcome of this bid could significantly affect the future operations of Royal Mail.
SK Square announces share buybacks to enhance shareholder value. On November 21, 2024, SK Square, the holding company of SK Hynix in South Korea, revealed a plan to buy back shares and nominate an independent director. This move aims to boost shareholder value amid concerns about the company's undervaluation. The announcement follows a proposal from Palliser Capital, a London-based hedge fund that acquired a 1% stake in SK Square earlier this year and recommended changes to improve returns for shareholders. SK Square plans to cancel shares worth 100 billion won, which is about $71.51 million that were repurchased in April. The company also intends to repurchase another 100 billion won worth of shares in the coming months and cancel those as well. SK Hynix recently reported a record quarterly profit, driven by rising demand for artificial intelligence chips from major customer NVIDIA. Despite this success, SK Square's market value is still less than half of the estimated $18 billion value of its stake in SK Hynix. Additionally, the Korea Exchange has launched a new stock market index this year to encourage companies to enhance their market value, aligning with government initiatives.
Bank of Japan considers interest rate hike. On November 21, 2024, Bank of Japan Governor Kazuo Ueda announced a focus on economic data ahead of a central bank's monetary policy meeting set for December 18 to 19. Ueda highlighted the importance of currency movements, especially the yen, in influencing Japan's economic outlook and inflation. After his comments, the yen strengthened against the US dollar, reaching an exchange rate of 154.65 yen per dollar. The yield on Japanese government bonds also rose, reflecting market reactions to the news. The Bank of Japan aims for a stable inflation rate of 2% and has already raised interest rates earlier this year. Analysts anticipate further rate increases in the coming months as speculation grows about the effects of economic conditions on monetary policy.
Haiti reacts to Macron's comments. Haiti's foreign minister met with the French ambassador to discuss comments made by President Emmanuel Macron during the G20 summit in Brazil. Macron criticized Haiti's Transitional Presidential Council for ousting Prime Minister Gary Conil, calling the move completely dumb. His remarks sparked outrage in Haiti, a nation with a complicated history with France. Activists claim that Haiti paid over $100 billion to France after gaining independence in 1804. The Transitional Presidential Council is facing accusations of corruption, while around 50% of Haiti's population is experiencing severe food insecurity. France has pledged €4 million, about $4.24 million, to support security efforts in Haiti.
Netanyahu denounces ICC ruling amid political support. On November 21, 2024, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu condemned the International Criminal Court's (ICC) decision to issue arrest warrants for him and former Defense Minister Gallant. He labeled the ruling as anti-Semitic and rejected the court's actions. The ICC, located in The Hague, Netherlands, stated there are grounds to believe that Netanyahu and Gallant are responsible for war crimes linked to the conflict in Gaza. This conflict intensified after Hamas launched an attack on southern Israel on October 7, 2023, leading to significant casualties in Gaza. Several Israeli politicians voiced their support for Netanyahu, criticizing the ICC's ruling and calling it shameful. The situation in Israel remains tense as discussions continue over military operations and the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
New regulations for digital payment services in the U.S. On November 21, 2024, the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau announced new regulations for digital payment services. Major tech companies that handle over 13 billion transactions each year will now be under government supervision. This includes popular platforms like Apple Wallet, Google Pay, and Venmo. The regulations aim to improve consumer protection, ensure privacy, and prevent fraud. Companies must process at least 50 million transactions annually to fall under these rules. The regulations will take effect 30 days after publication. Industry reactions are mixed, with some supporting the oversight while others are calling for its withdrawal.
FBI and DHS leaders skip Senate testimony. On November 21, 2024, FBI Director Christopher Wray and Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas declined to testify publicly before the U.S. Senate Homeland Security Committee about national security threats. This decision frustrated Senate Committee Chairman Gary Peters, who called it a surprising break from a 15-year tradition of public accountability. The FBI indicated that classified discussions would provide more valuable information, while the Department of Homeland Security offered a classified briefing instead. This refusal to testify followed the postponement of a House Homeland Security Committee hearing featuring Wray and Mayorkas, now set for December. This situation raises significant concerns about transparency in government actions related to national security.
U.S. policy shift on Ukraine missile use amid North Korean troop deployment. On November 21, 2024, President Biden announced a major change in U.S. military policy, allowing Ukraine to use American-supplied missiles against targets deep inside Russia. This decision was influenced by the deployment of North Korean troops to the Kursk region. The urgency for this shift increased after Donald Trump's election victory on November 5, raising concerns about the future of U.S. support for Ukraine. The presence of North Korean soldiers in Russia marked a significant escalation in the conflict, prompting the Biden administration to rethink its approach. The new policy was communicated to Ukraine during a call on November 12, and discussions followed with NATO allies. Shortly after, Ukraine conducted its first long-range strike under this policy, hitting an arms depot about 110 kilometers inside Russian territory. This policy change has significant implications, as it may strengthen Ukraine's military efforts while also risking a direct confrontation with Russia. The deployment of around 8,000 North Korean troops adds further complexity to the situation, potentially shifting U.S. foreign policy dynamics in the region. The White House noted that easing missile restrictions could escalate tensions, but the goal is to bolster Ukraine's position in the ongoing conflict.
Gunfire erupts in Juba, South Sudan. On November 21, 2024, heavy gunfire broke out in Juba, the capital of South Sudan. This violence occurred during an attempt by security forces to arrest Akal Kor, the former head of the National Security Service. The shooting started around 7 p.m. local time and lasted for over an hour. The United Nations issued a safety alert, advising its staff in Juba to stay indoors. This incident underscores ongoing political tensions in South Sudan, where President Salva Kiir recently dismissed Kor amid a power struggle. The country continues to face significant challenges with postponed elections and a troubled history of civil conflict.
ECB warns of economic risks from trade war. The European Central Bank, known as the ECB, has issued a warning about the potential economic consequences of a global trade war. Chief economist Philip Lane indicated that global economic output could drop by 2% to 10% if trade restrictions increase. Inflation rates might rise initially, but are expected to stabilize over time. In Cyprus, Central Bank Governor Christodoulos Patsalides raised concerns that Europe could face a recession along with high inflation if the United States imposes new tariffs. The ECB plans to continue adjusting interest rates to address these economic challenges.
Canada ordered to address backlog for First Nations children. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal has directed the federal government of Canada to take immediate action on a backlog of claims under Jordan's principle. This program is designed to ensure that First Nations children receive timely access to health and social services without discrimination. The tribunal's ruling highlights the necessity for the government to consult with First Nations groups to find solutions for the backlog, which may involve urgent cases affecting children's well-being. Advocate Cindy Blackstock has stated that government mismanagement has contributed to this backlog, endangering the lives of children. Since 2016, the government has allocated approximately $8.1 billion to support First Nations children. The government must report back with a plan by December 10, 2024.
Spain approves new tax package. On November 21, 2024, the lower house of the Spanish parliament in Madrid approved a new tax package. This package extends a temporary windfall tax on banks for 3 more years and introduces a minimum tax of 15% on large companies with annual sales over €750 million. Prime Minister Sanchez called this legislation vital for securing €7.2 billion in European recovery funds. The new tax structure will affect major banks like Santander and BBVA. The approval came after negotiations with smaller parties, including Podemos, and raised concerns about the impact of these taxes on renewable energy investments.
China's new trade measures amid U.S. tariff threats. On November 21, 2024, China's Ministry of Commerce announced new measures to boost foreign trade in response to potential tariffs from President-elect Trump. These tariffs could exceed 60% on all Chinese goods, raising concerns among manufacturers and prompting some to move their factories to Southeast Asia and other regions. The measures include financial support for companies and plans to increase agricultural exports. A recent poll suggested that the U.S. may impose nearly 40% tariffs on imports from China early next year, which could lower China's economic growth by up to 1%. To facilitate cross-border exchanges, China will assist business personnel from key trading partners visiting the country. These actions aim to support manufacturers in China and stabilize the economy amid rising trade tensions.
Swiss National Bank reports on inflation and interest rates. On November 21, 2024, Petra Scrutiny, a member of the governing board of the Swiss National Bank, reported that inflation in Switzerland is currently at 0.6%. This figure is the lowest since June 2021 and is within the bank's target range of 0 to 2%. The Swiss National Bank has cut interest rates 3 times this year, lowering the rate to 1%. Further decisions on monetary policy will be made at the upcoming meeting scheduled for December 12, 2024. These changes are important as they influence borrowing costs and overall economic growth in Switzerland.
Increased vaccine scrutiny anticipated under Trump administration. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, is expected to face heightened scrutiny over vaccine safety and development as Donald Trump takes office. Peter Marks, a senior official at the FDA, spoke at a conference in White Oak, Maryland. He indicated that the agency may need to improve transparency and hold more discussions with outside experts regarding vaccines. Concerns have emerged following Trump's nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Kennedy is known for spreading misinformation about vaccines, raising alarms among investors and causing a drop in shares of pharmaceutical companies that manufacture vaccines.
Quebec's economic update sparks criticism. On November 21, 2024, Quebec's Finance Minister Éric Girard announced a projected deficit of 11 billion Canadian dollars, approximately $8.1 billion US dollars. Opposition parties, including the Quebec Liberal Party, criticized the government's economic update, claiming the actual deficit could reach 15 billion Canadian dollars, or about 11.1 billion US dollars. Critics like MNA Frédéric Beauchemin and interim Liberal leader Marc Tanguay argued that the government's spending choices are misleading and wasteful. Concerns emerged about possible cuts to public services, with some parties warning that austerity measures may be on the horizon. This ongoing debate underscores significant issues regarding fiscal responsibility in Quebec.
Brazil criticizes Carrefour's meat decision. Brazil's government has criticized Carrefour, a leading French retailer, for its decision to exclude meat from the Mercosur trade bloc in France. Agriculture Minister Carlos Favaro called this move an attempt to undermine a trade agreement between the European Union and South America. He warned that Carrefour's actions could negatively impact Brazilian farmers who export beef and poultry to various countries. The Carrefour CEO expressed concerns about meat standards, but clarified that the company does not currently source Mercosur meat in France. The Brazilian meat industry has defended its products, highlighting their strict quality controls.
Northvolt files for bankruptcy in the U.S. Northvolt, a Swedish company that manufactures battery cells for electric vehicles, has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the United States. This filing is a major setback for Europe's ambitions to build a robust electric vehicle battery industry. Northvolt reported $5.8 billion in debt and only $30 million in cash, enough to keep operations running for about 1 week. The company has secured $100 million in new financing to support its bankruptcy process. Operations will continue as normal while Northvolt plans to restructure by early 2025. Scania, a leading Swedish truck manufacturer and Northvolt's largest customer, is providing assistance to help maintain production. This situation raises concerns about Europe's dependence on Chinese manufacturers, who currently dominate the global battery market.
Cambodia sentences activist New York NAK to prison. A court in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, has sentenced activist New York NAK to 2 years in prison for defamation and incitement. The charges stemmed from a Facebook post where New York NAK accused the labor minister of unfairly receiving forest land from the government. This case reflects a troubling trend, as many government critics have been arrested in recent months. Human rights organizations and the United States have condemned the Cambodian government for its actions against dissenters. The government maintains that it does not target critics but enforces laws against defamation.
Thales investigated for bribery and corruption. Thales, a major defense technology company from France, is currently under investigation by the Serious Fraud Office in the United Kingdom and the Parquet National Financier in France. This investigation centers on allegations of bribery and corruption linked to an arms contract in Asia. Thales has stated that it is cooperating fully with the authorities. The company employs more than 7,000 people at 16 locations across the United Kingdom, offering a range of military and civilian products. This situation raises important questions about corporate governance and compliance in the defense sector.
John Prescott passes away at 86. John Prescott, former Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, passed away on November 21, 2024, at the age of 86 due to Alzheimer's disease. Prescott was a key figure in the Labour Party's success during the late 1990s and early 2000s under Prime Minister Tony Blair. With his working-class roots, he had a remarkable ability to connect with the public. Prescott entered politics in 1970 and became Deputy Prime Minister in 1997. He faced several controversies, including a notable incident in 2001 when he punched a protester who threw an egg at him. His significant contributions to climate change discussions, especially regarding the Kyoto Protocol, are also remembered. Prescott's passing marks an important moment in British political history, leading to reflections on his legacy and impact.
New U.S. Ambassador to Canada announced. On November 21, 2024, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly welcomed the nomination of Pete Hoekstra as the next U.S. Ambassador to Canada. This announcement was made by President Trump. Joly expressed excitement about working with Hoekstra to strengthen the relationship between Canada and the United States and to tackle shared priorities. Hoekstra, a former member of Congress from Michigan, still needs confirmation from the U.S. Senate. Meanwhile, discussions between Canadian officials and U.S. senators in Washington, D.C. are focused on key issues like trade and security.
Rising carbon emissions in Greater Toronto Area. A recent report reveals that carbon emissions in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area rose by 1 million tons last year, surpassing levels recorded before the COVID-19 pandemic. Experts caution that achieving climate goals for 2030 and 2040 is becoming increasingly difficult without significant changes in energy consumption. The report identifies buildings as the primary source of emissions, although emissions from buildings saw a slight decrease due to warmer winters. On a positive note, more residents are cycling and walking, and there has been a rise in electric vehicle purchases. The City of Toronto aims for 30% of registered vehicles to be electric by 2030.
Bolsonaro linked to assassination plot against Lula. Brazilian federal police have revealed that former President Jair Bolsonaro knew about a plot to assassinate then President-elect Lula in 2022. This information was reported by CNN Brazil. The police plan to include these findings in their final report on an investigation into an alleged coup attempt against Lula's government. This development raises serious concerns about political violence and the stability of Brazil's political landscape.
Senate deal on judicial appointments. On November 21, 2024, a key agreement in the U.S. Senate allows President-elect Trump to fill 4 appellate judge vacancies. In exchange, Senate Democrats will move forward with President Biden's nominees for federal trial courts. This deal comes after the November 5 election, where Trump secured the presidency and Republicans took control of the Senate. The agreement disappointed some progressive advocates who sought to confirm more judges before Trump assumes office in January 2025. Since the election, the Senate has confirmed 8 of Biden's judicial nominees, raising the total to 221 confirmed judges.
Pound weakens against dollar amid economic speculation. On November 21, 2024, the British pound dipped slightly against the U.S. dollar, trading at around $1.26405. Investors are closely watching the upcoming appointment of President-elect Trump's Treasury Secretary and how it might influence economic policies on growth, trade, and taxes. The dollar strengthened, rising 1.2% against the euro, amid concerns about economic growth in the Eurozone and increasing inflation in the UK. The Bank of England may take longer to lower interest rates compared to other major central banks. Recent data indicated a rise in UK consumer inflation, raising expectations for potential interest rate adjustments in the near future.
Kenya cancels Adani Group deals amid bribery claims. On November 21, 2024, Kenyan President William Ruto announced the cancellation of major procurement deals with the Adani Group, an Indian multinational company. This decision came after U.S. authorities indicted Gautam Adani, the group's founder, for alleged bribery involving around $265 million. Cancelled projects included a nearly $2 billion expansion of Nairobi's Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and a $736 million public-private partnership to build power transmission lines. Concerns about transparency and value for money prompted this action. The Adani Group has denied the allegations and may pursue legal options. This situation raises significant questions about governance and the future of foreign investment in Kenya.
Trump's Crypto Advisory Council takes shape. Several cryptocurrency companies are vying for seats on President-elect Trump's new Crypto Advisory Council. This council aims to influence U.S. policy on digital assets. Trump revealed this initiative during a Bitcoin conference in Nashville, Tennessee, earlier this year. Companies such as Ripple, Kraken, Circle, and Coinbase are keen to participate. The council will provide guidance on cryptocurrency regulations and collaborate with Congress on relevant legislation. Enthusiasm for a crypto-friendly administration has driven Bitcoin prices closer to the $100,000 milestone. This council represents a significant development, as it will be the first dedicated group for cryptocurrencies within the U.S. government. That is all the news for today. Thank you for listening to today's headphone news. News summary brought to you by AI.